I have been bombarded, as have many people, with this notion of something called Nasara Jasara. Now, I'm pretty sure you're more across this than me, Jason, because I thought that sounds ridiculous. It's never going to happen. You know, that's sort of hopium, and what could it mean? But then I started to learn about the UCC. And when I do speeches myself, or when I MC and open for other people, I always talk about the UCC, which is the Uniform Commercial Code. Now, this Uniform Commercial Code, you would imagine, because it's commercial, has no bearing on us. Now, for a long time, I've researched and looked into this whole straw man scenario where all of your bills and your licenses and your passport and birth certificate and everything, your name is in capitals. And there are political parties in Australia, independent freedom parties, who say if any of these corflutes have names in capitals, you shouldn't vote for them, because that's not us. Your birth name is in English. You know, if it was Nicola, it's a big N and then small letters. And these capitals represent commercial. Now, they have been trying to draw humanity into corporate law, commercial law, for a long time. I believe ruthlessly it's behind the trans agenda and all of this identifying as other things, because once you publicly declare and legally declare, you know, I identify as a bridge or a cat or a puppy, you're actually taking yourself out of man-woman status legally. And once you do that, you're seen differently by the court. So a legal precedent has been set by a guy in Texas yesterday. Right now, all of this UCC commercial code, look it up, do your own research, has been allowed to fraudulently use us, human beings, as secured collateral for a long time, probably at least since 2014. Now, they've been able to do this lawfully because there were legal precedents for it. And yesterday, the legal precedent ended. So let me read to you what has happened. You can look it up in the press. The UCC has now defaulted to the UCC 1. This is I'm not over-exaggerating when I say this is the biggest news humanity, human beings, have ever received since the birth of Christ. I'm not exaggerating when I say that. This is the end of slavery. Right. So basically, the headline is mankind is free. A guy called Govinda Tidbal, I think he's of Indian heritage, but he's a Texan guy. So he says that there was a birth bond issue, and he was looking into it, and this is a straw man thing. So he was worried that it was a corruption lever. And as he looked into it, he realized it was. So it's the securitization of the living as a credit value on the dead. Sounds quite confusing. What does that mean? But it means that the living must pay for the dead. So cue the pandemic, right? The living are paying for the dead. So what it basically means is he has children. And once he'd learned all this information, his wife was pregnant and he was about to have a son. When the son was born, because he'd learned all of this, he, in his birth plan that he gave to the hospital, part of the birth plan was that the family get to keep the cord and the placenta. This is going to sound crazy, but this is what's happened with this UCC 1. Because he'd learned that the UCC, the Uniform Commercial Code, and courts in America had deemed the cord and the placenta, which at the time of birth are alive. They then ask you they say to you, would you like to cut the cord? In the moment that you say yes and you cut the cord and the placenta become a deceased twin of the living baby. This is how dark and greedy these people are, and the banks and financial institutions are behind it. What they then do is enslave the living child as a secured creditor to pay the debts of the dead twin, which was never a twin. It was a placenta and a cord. Can you believe this stuff? Let me read on. on. So he said, your fraudulent birth certificate is a corporatization of you, the living, right? And apparently 100 years ago, there was a guy called Edward Mendel House. And this was the evil way to kill the spawn of people at the moment of birth. And then it goes into the umbilical cord and what I just explained. He said it's all about property ownership. He said if you own a piece of silver and keep it as a piece of silver, it holds its value. But if you mix it with gold, it's considered corrupted. So this is what they were trying to do with us. It's securities fraud. It's a fraudulent security. And he claimed in court, Govinda, that the biological property of his child is his in the birth plan. No consent was given. So then a fraudulent securities instrument was still created, even though he said that in his birth plan. They still considered his son's cord and placenta as a dead twin, right? So they went ahead and did that, even though that was in his birth plan. They really messed with the wrong guy, Jason, right? So they said that he contracted with them, but he didn't. So they tested him to see if he knew what he was really talking about in court. So he believes, he said in court, that we're here to live and experience this planet and serve God, not as collateralization, right? So they make us the collateralization of the living, and that he's created a legal instrument so it's no longer in their hands. He has legally removed it. So it's now known as a public fraud. It's called a perfected claim. You're all going to have to research this on your own. I can actually put a link in of him describing this much better than I, right? These are just the headlines of it. So something called a final declaration has occurred under law. It is now a fact in law, and there is no debate. Anyone can see it. Anyone can bring it into any court case that they have, anyone they like, anywhere in the world. They are now, these people, the financial institutions, are now the debtor of the living. It's been flipped in UCC 1. It's a reversal, and NESARA GESARA is apparently now lawful, and in essence. So there is a criminal and a fraudulent side to what they've done. So as per the RICO code in America, people must be paid triple times 3 what was taken from them when they were used as secure collateral. Now, people our age, Jason, in their Cestui Que Vie trust, which is this secure collateral on our lifetime of work, paying the debts of the dead, is approximately, can be up to $1 billion. So they would owe each individual in that case $3 billion. That's what this case defines. It's called a legal precedent under the US code and the UCC code. This is all factual. You're going to die when you see the clip. It's what he said. It's why Doge exists. Doge is using this instrument now. There are lots of institutions involved, financial institutions around the world, and they can no longer do this. So it's a restoration of the living man globally. Physical bodies have been unfairly incorporated by a birth certificate bond with the name in all caps. It takes time to adjust, but they are now in something with the living. I can't read my own writing. They may not use us basically as secure collateral anymore. The all caps fraud is gone. It's over. The institutions will be breaking the law the next time they do this. I'm talking a bill, a fine, a birth certificate, a license, a passport, anything. If they do it in all caps and bring you into corporation, they're breaking the law. It's called a misprism of fraud and a felony by holding the living as secured collateral. He's had a win, Jason. There is now legal precedent. They can't do this to us anymore. And it's the end of slavery.